You are being marketed to. This is all part of their plan. I think it's a perfect game in the way it's designed. Why did I listen to all these videos that were saying it was great? It was not great. Hi, welcome to Actual LOL. I'm John Perkis. Today, I'm gonna answer all your questions. If you ever wanna ask me a question or know what I think about a game, then the best place to talk to me is on my Discord. Become a patron of the channel to join the Actual LOL Discord, which is a great community of like-minded gamers. Thank you to everyone that became a patron of the channel since my last video. Muchas gracias asks, what do you think is the worst aspect of the hobby right now, and how can we fix it maybe? I think the worst aspect of the hobby right now is just the huge Kickstarter culture that has become really just a way for certain people to make a lot of money off of the back of people's hopes. And they give them flashiness, components, they hit them with that FOMO, and they make them part with hundreds of pounds. And ultimately, there isn't a good game at the end of it. You can look at some of these companies' track records, look at the reviews of them, or the Board Game Geek comments years after the fact. And the hype is gone. That ask people if they're actually playing these games, if they're getting them off the shelf and bothering with them. Was the rulebook good? Was the gameplay better than all the other games in your collection that have been around for 20, 30 years? I don't think the answer is yes, hardly ever. For every Gloomhaven, there's probably 30 other games that are trying to be like that, but they don't have the integrity of the design. No, they're just maybe copying things, they're rushing it because they know that the design isn't the important thing that's going to make them money. And there'll be new people in the hobby that are blinded by it all, that haven't played the previous stuff, and they see all this flashiness, and they buy into it because they don't know any better. And it is just relentless marketing. And the more money you put into it, the more money you're going to get out of it. How do we fix it? I don't think we do really. I would just suggest that you question everything that you see on Kickstarter. Wait until reviewers have tried it and actually review to it. Or just normal people. Wait until your friends have played it or someone on Board Game Geek has played it. Then you'll know if it is worth it. That's not going to fix it. It's not going to make it go away, but it is hopefully going to make your gaming experience better, give you less disappointment, and ultimately mean you spend a lot less money on FOMO, on this hope, when you just don't need to. Crystal Grygo asks, what would you say are your top 5 favorite mechanics in a game? What games implemented any of those mechanics best? I don't really like to think of mechanisms as something that I care about that much. Deck building, dice drafting, worker placement, tile placement. I have games that represent all of those stuff, but I don't fixate on one type of mechanism because for me, it isn't that mechanism that's making the game fun. Now, obviously it's integral to the game, but I've played a deck building game that I like, say Clank. And then I've played 15 other deck building games that I don't like. So therefore, I think I don't like deck building games. But no, I just hadn't played one I like yet. The reason I like Clank is not because of the deck building, but also the reason I don't like those other games is not because of the deck building. It's what they're doing with it. It's the specifics of how they're using deck building. It's harder to define what then do I like. But I think that's where the magic is. There's a reason why a good designer can take those mechanisms and make something interesting with them. And then 100 people on Kickstarter can design a game that's worker placement or deck building, and it's boring and there's nothing to it because they don't have that magic. Menk90 asks, what are your most played games and why? Well, my most played game, if you're counting online, is Codenames. I play Codenames almost every day with the same 3 friends on the Codenames website. Probably even before that, I'd played it more times in person than any other game. And I just love it. It's endlessly replayable for me. The challenge of it is always interesting. I think it's a perfect game in the way it's designed. It's so thinky from both sides. It requires an interesting understanding of your friends. I really like the way that you're playing with words. I'm a writer. I really enjoy meaning and trying to convey meaning through that game. I love the push your luck aspect to it, that you can really try to win really big. There's a race aspect to it. You're trying to keep up with the other team. And, if they do really well, then you've got to match them. it really heightens the tension of the game. I love that there are these pitfalls like the assassin. You've got to be so clever with the clues that you're giving. Every game is completely different, and you'll have one game where the board feels quite easy and another one where it's just locked up and impossible. So that's by far my most played game. Sarah Dyer asks, what game do you most regret buying and what game was more than worth the money? So I've told this story before. We went to New York once for our 30th birthday, and I was so into board games at the time that I bought them from Cool Stuff Inc. and shipped them to my hotel so then I could bring them back in a suitcase, because board games at the time, and I think still now, are way cheaper in America than they are in the UK. They were like half price for all of these big board games. And the bigger the board game you bought, the more money you would save on it. So I really felt that I was getting ahead on all these games that I was going to have to buy eventually one day anyway, because I'm a board gamer, so I have to try these games. And I did loads of research and I watched loads of Dice Tower videos, and I convinced myself that I needed all of these games. And so I've got the spreadsheet still now, almost 10 years later. So Twilight Imperium would have been Twilight Imperium 3. I bought that, definitely regret it. I played it once, it wasn't for me, way too big, way too long, complicated. I would just rather play other games. Merchants and Marauders I still have, so I guess that was a win. City of Horror, no, I mean, I didn't like that game. I reviewed it. That's gone. Wits and Wagers I still have. Space Hulk, the card game. Why did I convince myself I needed that? No, didn't like that at all. The Battles of Westeros game and an expansion for the Battles of Westeros that I definitely didn't need. Regret that. Flashpoint Fire Rescue. Well, and I also bought multiple expansions for it. Made my own mistake of buying expansions and the base game at the same time. That game was okay. I don't have it anymore, but it's not as big of a regret that I bought that. Level 7 Omega Protocol. Total regret. I played that game once. I didn't like it at all. Why did I listen to all these videos that were saying it was great? It was not great. And that is proven by the fact that nobody talks about that game anymore. Nobody plays that game anymore. It has totally been taken over by other games. Galaxy Defenders, another huge miniatures game that had a bit of hype at the time, probably after a big Kickstarter game. Nobody talks about that game anymore. I'm sure no one plays it anymore. It's just another cooperative alien miniatures game, and it was just the one that was popular at the time. So huge regret buying that. I bought Agricola, which is not my kind of game, but it's not bad for what it is. I suppose I regret it, but not as much as others. I bought Bootleggers, which is a game set in Prohibition era where you are making and selling whiskey and negotiating. I actually kind of enjoyed that. I don't have it anymore. It's a fun game. There's a bit too much luck going on, but it's a cool game. It's my kind of game. The games that were more than worth the money, I would just say little games like No Thanks and Quinto. You get so much play out of them for what little that they cost. Ivan Loginoff asks, if you receive infinite money and resources to create a board game, what would it be? I think if I was to create a board game and spend all my time and effort on it, I would probably want to create like the ultimate crime solving game. And I think if I had infinite money, it would involve hiring professional crime novelists and writers to write those stories and just make them the best. But I think what would be disappointing about that is that I wouldn't get to play it. If I was designing it, then I would already know the solution of the mystery. One of the things that can let down those games is the writing. And if you could just get people that work on your favorite detective shows or write your favorite crime books, then that would be amazing. John Barrow asks, what is something you see commonly in the board game industry that you do not like? There are lots of things. One that stands out to me right now is the cult of personality around a board game publisher. This thing that builds up around publishers that often will start on Kickstarter, that people trust them more, that they are willing to overlook certain things, but not only that, that they will kind of go out to fight for them in forums and comments, that they will defend them over certain things that they've done. It just blows my mind. You are being marketed to. This is all part of their plan, this community thing. And it's not, it's a business. This is capitalism. These companies are making millions of pounds off of you. They don't care about you. They are not your friend. If there's a person at the head of it that they then defend. And I see people in comments go, oh, I trust you. I know that you're a good guy. No, you don't. You've never met this person. You don't spend any time with them. Most people don't even know if someone that has been at their wedding is a good guy. So yeah, that's something that bugs me. William Kramer says, not really a question, but I think you should make a video into how to groom friends into board games step by step. Well, I don't think I'd call it grooming, but I do think it's not a big secret. Just treat them like humans. Try to see it from their point of view. I think it's just very easy to get caught up in your head. It's your hobby. You've got 50 games that you've bought and you've got no one to play them with. And you're so excited and you just can't see it from their point of view. What do you think they would like? It's not about what you would like. Realize that it's not about trying to get through the most amount of games. If they like a game, and they want to keep playing it, keep playing it. If they only like light games, that's great. Just keep playing that with them. It isn't about trying to convert them into the kind of gamer you are because everyone's different. But absolutely, I think there is a way to encourage people to play more games. I think that everyone has a favorite game in them. I don't believe that board games are a hobby for a type of person. I think they're like films and music. And ultimately, everyone likes films and music. It might be that their favorite type of games just don't align with yours at all, and that's a shame. But I think most of the time there's a common ground, and even if Ticket to Ride isn't your favorite game, it's a game that a lot of people can enjoy, and maybe that's where your paths cross on, and you can have that fun together. But I do think that a lot of people are turned off from games because of Monopoly and bad experiences with some really bad games in their childhood. And so there is that sort of coming back around to it, that openness to try something new. There's a lot of barriers that you're having to work with as that friend that's trying to bring them back in. And yeah, hopefully that's where I could offer some advice. So I definitely consider making a video like that. Thanks for the idea. Shin asks, I'm not sure if you've spoken about this, but how did you get into the hobby? And follow up, what drove you to make a YouTube channel? I got into the hobby through a friend's dad, really. My friend Phil, his dad, Peter, was always into games since like the 70s or 80s and had a big collection. And he was living in London at the time. And I was kind of looking for stuff to do. I was starting to grow out of just going out and drinking. And we'd played a couple of games because Phil had a few. And I wanted to explore it more. So the opportunity was there. Let's hang out and play some games. And so we did. And our first game was London by Martin Wallace. And we played one or two others. And it wasn't any particular game that I loved, but it was the experience. And I really wanted to explore and learn more about what there was out there. And so then after that, Serena bought me Ticket to Ride for Christmas. And it kind of just snowballed from there. And then in terms of making videos, I made a whole video about this that describes this better on the channel. I used to work in TV. I'm a comedy writer, and that was my job. But it was like a freelance thing. I was always trying to get work, and it was very up and down, highs and lows, and very tough. And I really loved it. It was my passion. It's what I wanted to do in life. But it was really holding me back in a lot of ways. Very challenging financially. And so I needed something else. I'd never made any videos before, but I was obsessed with board games at the time, and I've been watching a lot of videos, and I felt like maybe I could try doing it. I was very apprehensive about the presenting side of it, but I knew how to make videos and edit videos loosely, and I knew how to write. And so I thought I could bring something to it. Like I needed this new path, and it ended up being that. Matthew Kuna asks, how often do you run into toxic gamers? I would say I'm lucky to not really run into toxic gamers that much. In terms of people that are, really unpleasant, I would say that's only happened like maybe a handful of times in the last 10 years that I play board games. There was someone that used to come to our meetup a long time ago that would get very competitive and very aggressive and angry, disputing rules, and it was horrible. And really, unfortunately, that person sort of took a liking to me. So they would often want to play games with me, and they just had a real temper. And I lost it with him once. It was just horrible to be around. And so I would just avoid going to groups when I saw him on the list. And then eventually he moved away, and it was just like, it was great for everyone involved. And it just became famous as this person throughout a group. Everyone knew. Haven't had experience like that in a very long time, and I'm really grateful for it. Kater Mur asks, where did Timmy get his excellent Adventure Time pajamas from? Well, it's an interesting one, that. So a friend of mine worked at the time for Cartoon Network, and so she actually gave me the shirt. It's not pajamas. It's a shirt and it's for adults, hence the fact that it can fit me. So I was starting to make videos, and I wanted to do a child character for the Christmas video, and I needed an outfit. And I had that idea that I knew that she worked in like merchandising for Cartoon Network, so she had a lot of kind of kids type stuff. And so I asked for like a big t-shirt, because I thought if I was wearing a t-shirt that was too big for me, it would make me look like a child, because I didn't fit into it. So she gave me a big t-shirt with one of the Adventure Time characters on. And that actually didn't work. And then she gave me the shirt, which was, I think, more her idea. And it just suited a lot better. The funny thing is I went on a pub crawl many years later, and there was a guy just wearing it out. Like, he was out in some pubs, and that was his outfit. It was just hilarious. Yeah, it was just really surreal seeing it out and about. 93 Demaro asks, are there any popular mechanisms or games that you personally consider overrated? I'm surprised by the desire to go back to deck building so much. There are certain mechanisms where people are just like, I'm going to make another one of those. I'm not sure that that's always as interesting as the person thinks it is. You think about all the deck building alternatives that are around, how many have actually stood the test of time. It's not that I think they're overrated. I'm just surprised that people go back to it. I would prefer to see designers trying to come up with new things. 20 years ago, less than 20 years ago, someone designed deck building, and now we've had hundreds of games. So why can't we have the new deck building? What, are we out of ideas? There's nothing else? In terms of games that I think are overrated, where do we start? Just looking at the Board Game Geek Top 100, I would say that Dune Imperium is very overrated. The fact that that is at number 13 already after only being out for a couple of years is crazy to me. Like, it's not a bad game. I've had fun playing that game, but it is not the 13th best game of all time. It shouldn't be even in the top 100. Wingspan is another game. I mean, Root, I think, is overrated. I think there are games that have just caught on huge amounts of hype, that have really tapped into something with an original theme and good artwork, and from a publisher with a strong pedigree. And they are absolutely solid games. They're probably all like 7 or 8 out of 10. A lot of them aren't for me, but I don't doubt that they aren't good games. But they are not the best games of all time. And they are not nearly as good as the hype is saying that they are. People can really buy in to a cult of a game, that they can buy all the expansions and they can feel like this is their game. So the people that really buy into that inflate that thing, and that's all they talk about. So that's all that other people hear about, and it becomes like a self-fulfilling thing. Akimbo Miner asks, have you ever played a game you liked at first but disliked the second time you played? Yes, definitely, but I think it tends to be a bit of more of a gradual decline. Seventh Continent is a game that really sticks out for me. I absolutely loved that game at first. I totally bought into it. I was exploring this world, and it felt very new and fresh to me at the time. But the more I played it, the more I just realized there was nothing underneath. There was no substance. I was just exploring for the sake of exploring. And I played hours and hours. So it wasn't the second play of it. But after something like 20 hours of playing that game, I was just completely done. I'd never ever go back to it. I bought into the idea of it so much that I was almost in this constant suspense. I would play it for like 5 hours on a game day, the whole time sort of enjoying that suspense, but never really nourished by the game. It reminds me a bit of the TV show Lost. There was a promise of something that never came, and you realize, oh, actually, I've been grinding this game. I've been playing it just to get to an end point that isn't worth it. And really, a game should be about the journey, and I don't think the journey had enough. All it had was that promise. Tornroot asks, what are some of your gaming highs and gaming lows, your proudest moments in board gaming, and those moments you'd rather forget? I don't tend to remember victories that much. It doesn't mean that much to me to win a game. I play so many games and I win enough to not feel bad at games. So I'm not sort of like threatened by my win to loss ratio or anything like that. But I'm just not that competitive to really care about the victories. I remember the feeling of winning a hidden traitor game, because I would say I'm not that good at lying. So if I was to pull something like that off, that would make me feel really good. But I couldn't tell you a specific moment or a specific group where that happened. But the feeling of that is something a bit different to winning other games. And then there's definitely been games of Codenames where I will like pull off an 8 clue and win the game like that. I mean, I've played so much Codenames online that I have tried everything, and very occasionally you pull off something extraordinary, and that always feels good. In terms of not proud moments, probably times where I might have just got a bit miserable, where I wasn't doing well. I think sometimes you can be tired, and I've never really had like a tantrum or anything. David Euler asks, what games do you recommend for people who want to get into the game quickly with a short rulebook? Maybe as a good Christmas gift, which you can try immediately without knowing the rules beforehand. Well, if you're looking for good Christmas gifts, then check out my Christmas gifts videos, because almost all the games in there and my like ultimate Christmas gift guide, all of those are really easy to learn. A lot of them are party games or simple card games, and they were picked for that reason, that you could play them with anyone and give them to people that aren't already into board games. But also, I mean, I've made loads of videos on this topic. I've literally made a video called Top 10 Games for People Who Hate Rules, so check that one out. The video I made at the festival, Camp Wildfire, is really good for games that are easy to learn and teach, because we were teaching games to people throughout a whole festival, often people that don't play board games. We needed stuff that was super easy to teach and understand. And so ultimately, through trial and error, we found those games. And so that video is perfect for that. And the best game in that is the game Just One. So I would recommend that. Telestrations or Scrawl is another game that comes to mind. And then I've also got a video for card games that you could play with anyone. Again, very simple card games that I would play with like a grandma. African Chicken asks, what advice do you have for a young up-and-coming 20-year-old with a fresh, optimistic outlook on life? Also, I have 2 cats. Well, if you're asking for life advice, I would say just try things. Try as much as possible. One of the things that I suppose has frustrated me as I got a bit older is that I didn't try things sooner. I could have been playing board games. You're 20 years old and you're watching board game videos. Hopefully that means you're playing board games. You're so lucky. I didn't get into board games properly until I was 28. I missed out on 8 years. And then more recently, I've got into swing dancing, which is something I've been doing for about 5 years. Oh my God, I wish I'd got into that when I was like 18, 21. I could be so good at it now, but I could have enjoyed my best like physical years dancing. And it's such a shame that that was out there. I'd seen things like that in London. I knew it was a possibility, and I was just kind of too busy being a young person and just kind of going out drinking. And I didn't really have hobbies in quite the same way. If I'd experienced this thing, I just feel like it would have enriched that part of my life and given me something else to focus on, especially at a time when I wasn't enjoying my career. And so I could have used something on the side to kind of enjoy, and board games the same. I would say just always be open to new things. I didn't think that I would be the kind of person that would be into dancing, and I totally fell in love with it, and it's a big part of my life now. There's so much out there in terms of kind of hobbies and enjoyment, and I'm not sure you really know yourself at that age, and kind of like I really feel like I understand who I am now. So I would just say try stuff. Don't stick with the path that everyone your age is doing. You don't have to do things the same as everyone else. And you find when you explore stuff, there's actually like these hidden communities and hobbies. Like you go to Essen for the first time as a board gamer and you're like, wow, this is how big modern board games are. But friends of mine that don't play board games have no idea that that world is out there. And I think that's really exciting that there are other worlds like that out there to explore. And you should, get out there and do it. Kerubium asked, do you have a Holy Grail board game? I used to, but I think I've found most of the games that I ever wanted to. There is one game that is very hard to get hold of from the 80s called Gumshoe, which is like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. It might even be from the same designers, but about like an American gumshoe detective. But I don't feel that I need it anymore. At the time, there was just sort of one detective game and 10 cases in it. And now there is so much content in Chronicles of Crime and Detective of Modern Crime Game and Detective City of Angels and all the Sherlock games that I've just got so much to get through. I don't need another one. And I would expect that because it's kind of old and outdated, I might find it disappointing anyway. And that's the experience I've had with Grail games. There have been many games that I've sought out and paid over the odds for, hunting them down on Board Game Geek. And then actually I play it once and it just wasn't that great. I've kind of gone off the idea of a Grail game. It was something that was big when I first got into the hobby, and there were games that felt they'd just been out of print forever, like Tales of Arabian Nights. And then I was so hyped about that game and I hated it so much. And it really just made me question how I was looking at it. You don't need your Grail games. I really promise you don't. And I would bet you that there's a game out there that you can buy right now and it is better than the game that you think you want. Because for me, that's been true every single time. Adam Winton asks, any chance you'll record another Essen Spiel video? Maybe. I'm trying to be more responsible in the videos I make. So I can't on the one hand make a mistakes video where I say buy less games, and then on the other hand make all these Essen videos that are just hyping up lots of games, sort of showing you all these games that you can buy. Back when I was making Essen videos, I would, make these haul videos where I'm just showing off all of these games, most of which I haven't played. With my Essen sort of preview videos, I was having to turn it around so quickly that I couldn't give like a proper review. I think it plays into this kind of buy everything hype that a lot of people in the board game hobby get caught up in. And I don't think that that's a responsible thing for a reviewer like me to be kind of playing into. Essen exists to sell people games. And I'm not here to sell you games. I'm here hopefully to entertain you and to help you kind of navigate this hobby and to recommend good games. It isn't important for me for you to buy games. And so it's weird to kind of perpetuate that idea that you should be buying lots of games. I just want to celebrate games. I want to talk about games because that's when I was getting into games. I was just watching videos all the time about games. I wanted to learn about them. I wanted to understand about them. But I can't play all the or buy all the games that everyone's talking about in videos. So if I was to do an Essen video again, I think I would change maybe how I was to do it. But for now, I think I'm happy covering the games in a different way. Top Cat asks, if you could only use one game to introduce a newbie to the hobby, what would it be? For me, it's Ticket to Ride. Well, Ticket to Ride is probably the one that I would pick most of the time. I always just try and think of the person, I've probably had at least a conversation with them. What kind of person do I think they are? I do find that Ticket to Ride hits a really sweet spot where I think it is nice and interactive for people that like that kind of thing, but it's not so much that it's ever really going to upset anyone. Some people really want like a meme game because they're coming in from something like Monopoly. Ticket to Ride offers a bit of that, but probably not enough. And I wish there were more meme gateway games that I would recommend. I would also just go to Pandemic a lot. That's the game that I would say a lot because I think the theme really grabs people. And because it's cooperative, I really think it showcases that modern board gamers are different. That here, come see this hobby because look how much has changed since you last played board games. Matic asks, with board games getting more expensive, how do you think that will affect the popularity of the hobby in poorer countries? I would say that the hobby is more than just the new games coming out, and it's more than just owning every game or even buying more games. The hobby financially is very different from the hobby as a community. I don't think it has to be connected, and I do think at a time of poverty that things like board games can be great because you buy one board game for 20-30 pounds and that's it. You can play that and play that or hopefully you already own it, or maybe you get it in a charity shop. I appreciate that 30 pounds is already quite a lot, but the point being that this hobby can grow as a community without people needing to buy new games. And I think it's a bit of a confusing idea that we need to be kind of propping up this industry and making out that, oh my god, it has to keep growing and expanding, and there needs to be this constant growth of money. No, I would like board games to spread more organically and for the whole world to consider themselves board gamers, but that doesn't mean that they need to own hundreds of games. It just means that they play board games a lot. Big Aleka asks, how do you find other board gamers in the UK? It seems hard to do this over here compared to the USA, say. In terms of meeting people to play with in real life, your best bet is to try meetup.com. Hopefully someone in your area has created a board game meetup, and that's the best place to organize them on. That's how I met so many board gaming friends, is by going to a local meetup in London. If there's nothing on Meetup, maybe on Facebook, there might be a Facebook group. And if you can't find anything, you might need to create one yourself. A lot of the groups have waned since the pandemic, so we're trying to rebuild these communities, and it's going to take a long time. Jonathan Levy asks, what is your favorite character in your videos? I like Barry because he's just such an idiot. I think I like the ones that are inspired by real life. Barry is an amalgamation of different people I've met, and there's some truth to Barry. I like the geeky character that's in my mistakes video. I find him sort of hard to play, but I think, again, he was in my Pandemic Legacy song. He's just such an idiot, but he allows me to retell things that have happened. I liked the cheerleader that I played in my zombie video just because that was a bit out of left field, and the art teacher that's in my Pictionary video, the Dark Moon character, like the Cylon character. Yeah, there's some fun ones. Shin asks, do you find yourself enjoying games less as a result of being a reviewer? No, not really, because the way I explain it is this, that I make videos. I spend most of my time making videos, writing videos, filming them, editing them, thinking about them. If it was anything I was going to dislike, it's that. It's not the playing games that is the problem, or even a huge aspect of what I'm doing. It's integral to it. I don't get slogged down by it. It isn't the kind of grind of my work. I definitely approach it differently. I can be kind of calculating in my head. If I play a new game or a game that I'm thinking about reviewing, I'm ticking off a box and I feel good about that. Like, it's making my life easier. There's a to-do list. But ultimately, that core experience of playing a good game with good friends is still great to me. And I still really enjoy that. And being a reviewer hasn't really, it certainly hasn't ruined it. And I don't think it's really dampened it in any significant way. Chief Joe asks, do you have a video editor? If not, why not? I don't have a video editor, and it's really just because of money. I make the money that I get paid on Patreon, and that's, just about enough salary for me, but I don't have enough to pay someone else. I have tried here and there. Like last year, I was working with someone that I was hoping to kind of bring on to raise more money, and sort of expand, be able to make more content, but that just didn't work out. It just hasn't been financially possible. Jay Christoph asks, are you really married? Or is that just you wearing a wig? That is just me wearing a wig. But I am really married to Serena. We've been together for a long time, 17 years, almost 18 years. And we've been married for 3 years. So yeah, I am. Which is why in older videos, I refer to her as my girlfriend. And in fact, when I write the scripts, I still call her girlfriend because it's my girlfriend character. But I guess she's now been upgraded to my wife character. Shin asks, how many times do you usually feel the need to play a game before you feel that you formed a solid enough opinion on it to review it? Well, I feel like that is the trap question that every commenter wants to ask a reviewer. I would say that it changes for every game. If you play a party game, you know what that game is like in 1 or 2 games. But it's also something that you can kind of feel. Like, you know whether you need to play a game more because you haven't seen all of it. From everything that you've seen so far, you can expect that there's more to come, so you need to try it more. I don't have a hard and fast rule. I would say that I probably play games more now than I used to, but that isn't because I've become more critical or more credible or anything. It's because I have more time to devote to that. If you believe that there's a problem, which is that reviewers don't play games enough, the only way to fix that is to support them so that they have the time to take their time. Michael Knopp asks, how do you get a gaming group started? That's tough. I mean, I think it just depends who you are. Some people are really lucky to have a lot of close friends nearby that get into games. And when I first started playing games, I did have more friends in London that really were into games, and now they've moved out. And so I had to then sort of almost start again. I would say don't force it with the friends that you have unless you see that excitement from them. I think you can have like the odd game night is very different from sort of trying to start a game group. You've got to sort of check the enthusiasm levels. Some people are really enthusiastic. They just don't have the time for you. Other people like it, but they just prioritize it differently in their life. And so they have, it can be a bit frustrating because they have fun every time, but you just don't get that sense that they really want to come back again in like a week. I would say you need to get out there and try and meet other gamers in your local area. I found that going to meetups was really good because you could take your time to get to know someone before you then like invite them to your house, which is quite a big step. And so it's like you're already friends before you're actually trying to get a game group together. Kate Amur asks, do you ever feel that you have to play a game or attend a session when you're not really in the mood for it for work? And if so, how do you prevent this from impacting your judgment or enjoyment of the game? That's a good question. Maybe sometimes, but generally speaking, no. I think one of the reasons that this job suits me is because I do naturally have a desire to just always play new games and to always be playing games. I think most people wouldn't have the appetite that I have, and because I do, it doesn't affect me. I also have an appetite to be in social situations. I've long realized that I'm an extrovert and I need to get out there and get social experience. But for over 10 years, I've been working from home writing. It's a really lonely existence long before the pandemic and everyone else was working from home. So board games was one of the key ways for me to get out there and meet people. It's one of the reasons I started playing board games. As much as I need to play a game for my job, I need to play a game because I need some social interaction. I need to just be out. I need to see friends and see people, or otherwise I'd go crazy at home. Like literally, like I've, can get really lonely and unhappy and have done. And so that's kind of where my board game hobby comes from. So the necessity to constantly be playing games doesn't really affect me because it actually kind of suits my life as it is. That's it. Thank you to everyone who asked me the questions. And if you ever want to ask me a question, then please do join the Discord community, become a patron of the channel at patreon.com/actualol. I'm John Perkis. Thanks for watching.